name is Jane Parhiala, and I have just published a book called Reckless at the Border.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Rowland. We're here with Jane to talk to her about her new book, Reckless at the Border, a dual memoir she wrote with her ex-husband, Pradeep Parashar. It was a short engagement and an even shorter marriage. He had a very eventful experience. Jane, tell us a little more about how you came to write the book.
I knew that this was an unusual marriage, and for years I couldn't believe I actually lived through some of these events. And I would tell people about this story. People say, "Oh, have you been married before?" And I would say, "Yes." And then I would go on and tell this story. And many people said, that would be an interesting story, maybe even as a book. And so when I got my computer and put a website up, my ex-husband popped up on my screen one day, and that just started us talking and saying, why don't we do this book together? Let's write our story.
So tell us a little about that story.
The story. It was a whirlwind marriage. I was unemployed at the time in San Francisco, and he wanted somebody in his life, and we met at my apartment. My roommate was a friend of his and came to visit one day, and we just, I don't know, it was just the right timing, and he was intriguing, he was exciting, he loved to travel. I wanted to do more traveling, and because I was an unemployed teacher, I thought perhaps maybe a different profession. He was a travel agent, owned his own business, and I thought, wow, this would be an extraordinary adventure to be married to a man from India, to travel, to have a new profession, and off we went. This is the book that I just published, or have published, Reckless at the Border. And I'm going to read right at the beginning of how it all began. My glasses. Cape Cod, Massachusetts, 2014. Papers, photos, and letters were either piled high on shelves, stuffed in drawers, or spread out on the floor. As I looked around at this mess, I realized the time had come to clean up and get organized. My daughter lived in Boston, finishing her senior year at Massachusetts School of Art and Design, and my son worked for the National Park Service in Northern California. Both children seemed content with their living situations, and at least for the moment, were not living at home. My husband and I agreed to delve into the arduous task of sorting and throwing things out. We hated to admit it, but we both enjoyed squirreling away our little and sometimes not so little treasures. I tackled the bedroom first and zoomed into the small wooden night table next to my bed. It had 3 drawers which were filled with writing paper, old cards, and folders. I found myself looking for one folder in particular. I knew it was somewhere in one of those drawers, but which one? Then I found it. The envelope, stained and crinkled with a little tear on the flap, sat in my hands as if it were a fragile ancient scroll. Should I open it and be reminded of him once again? I paused, then slowly shook out its contents. My past came spilling out. There were still the questions, the whys, wheres, and what ifs. One by one, the photos of all our dreams showed themselves. The smile on his face, the body I touched and kissed, the dear one who lied and deceived me. Or did he? The letters attempting to explain what happened. I was not ready to dismiss the man from India whom I had married 34 years ago and had divorced. How could I? My wedding dress hung in my closet. I made it myself. The saris his sister gave me on our wedding day were neatly folded in a dresser drawer. I could never figure out how to put them on. A statue of Lord Krishna, the Hindu deity of love, which he left behind, sat on the windowsill in the living room. Giving myself permission, I slowly examined each picture, each letter pulling me into the past, feeling emotion and longing for answers, and somewhere deep inside, still a caring for him. After viewing the pictures through bleary eyes, I put the letters and photos back into the envelope, placed them ceremoniously in an unmarked box, and carried it to the attic to be discovered by me again at a later date, or by my children someday. Meanwhile, convinced that I needed to keep up with my kids and society in this digital age, I reluctantly purchased a computer, and a techie friend set up a website for my weaving business. A week later, while I proudly admired my shiny new Mac and my website, a submission appeared. So far I had received only 3, all from friends wishing me well, but on this particular day, the submission I received was from him, my former husband, Pradeep Parashar.
So tell us about your honeymoon.
The honeymoon, he started saying we could have a honeymoon around the world in 80 days. And that's exactly what we did. And during that time, he just wanted to look at more businesses in Germany, more business in India. And so we traveled to many countries in Europe. And then we went on to India and spent about a month there, and then traveled to Thailand and to Hong Kong, and then back again to Hawaii. And that's where more adventures happened.
We'll save those adventures for the book. But that was the cause of your divorce. Right?
Yes.
Before you met him, Pradeep traveled from India to Germany and then to the U.S. with many adventures along the way. Can you tell us a little bit about him and what his motivations were for making such an ambitious and challenging journey at such a young age?
He was a very restless young man, and he really felt that he wanted more than what India could offer him. And he wanted to see the world. And the Peace Corps volunteers came to Gwalior, where he grew up, and they were American. And they would talk to him about life in America. And he just thought, oh, that's much better than what I'm living and how I see my brothers living and my aunts and uncles, and I want something more. So an opportunity came up, and he just took advantage of it and left India and had many exciting adventures on his way.
The book is written in an unusual way. First Pradeep tells his story, then you tell your story up until the time you meet. Then, for your adventures around the world, there are 2 versions of each story. Yours and his, based on your memories or perhaps interpretations of the events. Can you tell us how you decided to write it that way?
I thought it would be very interesting to have both points of view, because so many times we'll see things and 2 people have different ideas of what is actually happening, and they'll have their perspective, and then the other person will have their perspective. And I wanted to see how Pradeep saw these things happening actually when we started writing this. I wanted to see his point of view. And I found it was quite different from what I was experiencing, and I thought that would be interesting for the reader to see how we both viewed different episodes during our journey together.
Can you tell us a little maybe about one episode or one view on life that might be different in terms of your culture and his culture?
Well, in India, it was important that the man has a little more to say than the women. And the men had more freedom. And when I was visiting India, I couldn't go out on the streets without being almost bombarded by men. And then I had to go back into where I was staying. And Pradeep just thought that was normal, and that he would go off for the day and leave me alone, and that I should be content being by myself. And he really felt it was all right and didn't feel any, there was a problem with that. Whereas I thought it was a very big problem. I don't know if
Especially at the time when women in this country were beginning to exert their freedom.
Yes.
In the 70s.
Yes.
What was the writing process like, and what was it like to see Pradeep after so many years?
Well, it was rather exciting, actually, because I really didn't know what happened to him, and I was pleased to know that he had a lovely family, that he had work, doing the things that he loved, being manager of a hotel in Agra where the Taj Mahal is, so there's lots of international people coming and going, and that's what makes him real excited. He loves to be around the people. And it was nice to be able to catch up on our lives. And writing the book was also interesting because, again, I didn't know what he was thinking for how many years, 34 years, about our marriage and about our time together. So we were able to laugh about it a little bit. We were able to be a little serious about it. And I enjoyed listening to his stories that he had to tell me, because I didn't know about his journey from India as a young man to Germany and then coming to the United States. So all of that was quite, or at least I couldn't remember. I didn't remember it anyway. So it seemed like it was all new information. And I just wrote and wrote, and he talked and talked, and we drank chai and ate very good food, and it was enjoyable.
You mentioned in your book your love of textiles. Can you tell us a little bit more about that from that time, or from growing up to now? You're interested in textiles.
Right. My mother loved to sew and braid rugs and wallpaper our house and just do everything. And she sewed my clothes, and then she taught me how to sew. And then my Finnish grandmother, who lived past, I guess it was a field away, I could say, had a loom in her house, and she wove these rag rugs. And so it was an introduction to having wool around our house and fabric everywhere. And I naturally took that interest along with me throughout my life. I never did braid a rug, and I didn't start weaving until I retired. And how many years ago was that? 5-6 years ago. So it's very new to me. But sewing has always been an interest. I even had a little boutique on Martha's Vineyard for a couple of years where I did the sewing and designing of clothing. And that just was delightful to be around other fiber artists on the vineyard.
How has this experience with Pradeep changed your life?
What I have gotten out of knowing Pradeep and spending that short amount of time with him back in the 70s, and then again now in the present, was my my love of adventure and travel. I went around the world with this man. I have traveled now all through India with this man, and it has shown me how much I really love India in many, many ways, and how I want to see more of the world. And that I have done with his influence as a travel agent. And I never did go into the travel industry, and I guess I kind of wish I had continued that after we had parted. You know, life goes on, and you know, for 10 years I just wasn't interested in marriage, and nobody came along until I moved to Woods Hole, and I met my husband, you know, contra dancing in the community hall in Woods Hole, and he also loved to travel, and he was loved the outdoors, and we canoed and bicycled and hiked, and we did that with our children. We sailed to the Bahamas, and we had adventures, and that has been a great extension to my life.
And speaking of your life, I met you through the Falmouth Cultural Council, which you are director of. Can you tell us a little more about that?
I've been a member of the Falmouth Cultural Council now for almost 6 years, and this year I am now chairman, and we have a wonderful group of women who are working, helping out with the purpose of the Cultural Council is to give grants, and we have done, we have a wonderful group of people. We have like 26 people, 23 to 26 people who got grants, and we're able to offer them money, which is donated to us or allocated to us from the Mass Cultural Council. And so we're working on having our great grantee reception, which has had to be held off for a while because of the coronavirus, and we're hoping that we can all get together again in the fall to honor the talent of these many artists. We also sponsor the art market that takes place in the summer in July and August at the Marina Park in Falmouth. And that again, we are hoping that we'll be able to have that in July and August, but we're waiting to see how the virus continues on its path.
I know you're a wonderful weaver because I'm wearing one of your beautifully woven scarves today. Tell us a little more about your weaving and your love of textiles, and about your upcoming shows.
So this is one that I started a couple of years ago, but finished, I guess last year I finished this. And this is going to be at the Highfield Hall exhibit.
And when is that?
I think it's going to be in May. It's going to be on the internet. They're doing a virtual
Wonderful.
Gallery tour,
Yeah.
I guess. Okay. And this is the one I just finished. And this is going into the Falmouth Arts Center virtual gallery tour. And I'm not sure when that's happening. I think in May also. These are my scarves. The scarf I have on, I bought in India, in southern India, and I loved it so much that I decided to not quite copy it, but it influenced these current scarves. Oops, extra thread. This is this one. And this one. This one is made out of tencel, which is a wood fiber, and it's very, very soft and very silky. And this was, and the purple one is a cotton. And this is Shetland wool with Angora rabbit, which is from a farm out in, up in Vermont, Wardsboro, Vermont. And this is this one here.
These are beautiful. Really nice.
And hopefully we will put the wool one away and we will have cotton and tinsel for the summer.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So where can we get your book?
Well, Reckless at the Border is available through Amazon. It is in book form and in Kindle form.
And soon, hopefully, in local bookstores.
And soon in the local bookstores, yes.
All right. It's been great talking to you today, Jane. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Marilyn.
Bye-bye.